So this is pizza dough in real time. You want to get yourself some water that's tepid. It doesn't feel hot to your finger, it doesn't feel cold to your finger. You get 2 cups. You want to be pretty precise on your 2 cups. And you want to get some active yeast. I use 2. Could you come a little closer, please? I use 2 heaping as much as I can get on a teaspoons. So you put those in, give it a little stir. I keep my yeast in the freezer in a mason jar. So you just stir it up so that the yeast isn't all floating on the top. Next thing, we're going to measure out some flour. I've used expensive fancy flour in the past, and I've used just all-purpose flour, and I find that this gold medal all-purpose has given me the best dough I've had, and I've been making this pizza for some time. Next thing, you want to measure out 5 cups of flour. And obviously, if you don't want this much, you can use less. But I'm using level scoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't hurt to give this an extra stir. Okay, next, 2 heaping spoons of salt, teaspoons. Doesn't matter if a tiny bit more goes in because you want, 2 heaping spoons is what you want. Give this a little bit of a stir together. Make a little pocket in the center. Dump in your water and yeast mix. The counter's already been cleaned. Get yourself a rubber spatula. Do a little bit of preliminary mixing. Just enough to get everything mixed. In the past, I've tried just dumping it on the counter and it makes a mess because the water's not saturated into flour enough. So you get it so that when you spill it out, the water's not going to run around. But you don't have to worry about mixing it too well. That's good enough. Now you want to scrape out your bowl. If you do this in the morning before work, you come home later and you have yourself a great dough that's ready to go. All right, so then when you mix this and you knead it, if it's all sticky and really sticky and all over your hands, you probably put in a little bit too much water, or you need a little more flour. You don't want it to, and if it's mixing too hard to where you don't really get yourself a dough that's all set up pretty quickly, well then, you didn't use enough water. And what I find is if you use too much water later on, after it's risen and you try to stretch it out for your dough, you end up with something that's almost unmanageable. It's a little too moist and wants to fall apart when you want to stretch it. So you got to have it a little bit, you know, you got to be able to work it. Like this is perfect. It's not sticking to my hands. Okay. If it's stuck all over your hands, you got a little too much water, add a little bit more flour, but don't go too crazy because you shouldn't be here for like a half an hour trying to knead this. It should go pretty quick. And look at my hands. If your hands are all sticky, it's too wet. But look at how fast this can come together. It's like dough already. Now this is enough for 2 16-inch pizzas. And I guess you could be all technical and weigh it out, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and cut it by eye so that later these are going to rise individually, so I don't have to worry about trying to separate it later. So just kind of get it to where you can eyeball it. We're going to go this way. So then what? I just take a couple bowls. I like to use an olive oil spray. So just spray your bowls. Take your dough, stick it in there. Put a little bit of oil on the top of your dough. Then I like to put a little bit of cellophane on top. And I don't put it on tight. I make it like too big so it has room for the dough to rise. I put on 2 pieces, one in different directions. Perfect. So that's the whole process for getting the dough going in the morning.